At exactly 8:42 a.m., two police vehicles stopped outside the headquarters of Ravensport Global Holdings. The building sat at the center of the financial district, glass, steel, and quiet authority. From the outside, nothing suggested that anything unusual was about to happen. Inside, the morning routine continued uninterrupted. Executives moved through the lobby with coffee cups in hand. Security screens cycled through camera feeds. Elevator doors opened and closed with mechanical indifference. And near the reception desk, a woman in a gray housekeeping uniform waited for her shift supervisor. Her name was Elena Brooks. She had arrived at 6:03 a.m. as she did every weekday. Her routine never changed.
Clock in.
Collect supplies. Begin on the lower floors before executives arrived. By 8:41, she had already cleaned 3 conference rooms and emptied the trash outside the executive elevator bank. At 8:42, the front doors opened. 2 uniformed officers entered the building. They didn't look rushed. They didn't look uncertain. They walked with purpose. Security footage later showed the exact moment Elena noticed them. She paused mid-step. Not in fear, but in recognition. Her shoulders stiffened slightly, as if her body had already accepted what her mind was still processing. The officers approached. One of them asked her name. Elena Brooks, she replied. They asked her to step away from the desk. Witnesses later described her expression as calm. No confusion. No protest. She did not ask why. She did not raise her voice. The officer informed her she was being detained in connection with an ongoing financial investigation involving Ravensport Global Holdings. The word theft was used. $1 million. The handcuffs came out next. Cold. Standard issue. Visible. And just a few feet away, watching silently, stood the man who controlled everything in that building. Marcus Vale. Marcus Vale was not supposed to be there that morning. According to his schedule, he was meant to arrive closer to 10. But records later showed his private elevator was activated at 8:12 a.m. He stood near the reception desk, hands folded behind his back, his tailored suit immaculate. Marcus Vale had built Ravensport Global Holdings from nothing. At least that was the story. He was known for discipline, precision, and restraint. He rarely spoke publicly. He never raised his voice. And when problems arose, he handled them quietly. Witnesses described his reaction to the arrest as composed. No anger, no surprise. At one point, as Elena was turned toward the exit, Marcus Vale smiled. It wasn't wide. It wasn't cruel. It was brief, controlled, almost polite, the kind of smile that signals resolution. Elena Brooks did not look at him. She kept her eyes forward as she was escorted past the security desk she had cleaned every morning for nearly a decade. The building remained silent. No one intervened. No one asked questions. Executives returned to their emails, and the doors closed behind her. By noon, the story had already taken shape. Internal memos referred to the incident as an isolated breach. Public statements described it as swift cooperation with authorities. No press conference was held, but within the company, the message was clear. The problem had been identified and removed. What no one mentioned, what no one questioned, was how a woman earning barely enough to survive had allegedly accessed a dormant corporate account and transferred $1 million without triggering any internal alarms. That question would come later, much later. At the police station, Elena Brooks sat alone in a small interview room. She had been searched, photographed, processed. Her belongings were sealed in plastic bags. She had not yet spoken to a lawyer. An officer eventually entered and placed a folder on the table. Inside were screenshots, access logs, transaction timestamps, a keycard record bearing her employee ID. She stared at them quietly. Then she said something investigators would later remember. "I clean the floors," she said. "I don't touch the money." That night, Marcus Vale left the office at 9:14 p.m. Security footage shows him pausing briefly in the lobby. The floors gleamed. The desk was spotless. Everything was exactly where it belonged. If the maid didn't take the money, why did the system say she did? By the time Elena Brooks spent her first night in a holding cell, Marcus Vail was already being described internally as the victim. That framing did not come from the media. It came from within Raventport Global Holdings itself. Emails sent to senior staff that evening used careful language. An unfortunate breach of trust. A deeply disappointing betrayal. A reminder that no system is immune. Marcus Vail's name appeared only once in those messages, always attached to words like cooperation, transparency, and leadership. To the outside world, Marcus Vail was the man who had been stolen from. To those who knew him well, this was not surprising. Marcus Vail had spent his entire career making sure that when something went wrong, it happened away from him. Marcus Vail did not come from inherited money, at least not officially. According to his biography, he grew up middle class, studied economics, and built Raventport from a modest logistics firm into a global holding company. It was a story he rarely told himself. Others told it for him. Profiles described him as meticulous, risk-averse, obsessed with systems. Former employees described him differently. They used words like controlling, surgical, unforgiving. Marcus Vail did not believe in chaos. He believed in design. Every department at Raventport functioned on layers of approval, layers of separation, layers of insulation. No single person ever held full visibility, except Marcus. Employees learned quickly that asking questions was not encouraged. Not explicitly discouraged either. Just unrewarded. Marcus Vail did not shout at people. He did not threaten. He simply stopped inviting them into meetings. Stopped CCNG them on emails. Stopped acknowledging their presence. At Raventport, silence was punishment. And loyalty was rewarded with proximity. The closer you were to Marcus Vail, the less you spoke. One thing Marcus Vail was known for, quietly, among finance professionals, was his relationship with auditors. He tolerated them. He never trusted them. Raventport underwent audits regularly. Always passed. Always clean. But there was a pattern. Audits were scheduled strategically. Data access was precise. Questions were answered, but rarely expanded. Marcus Vail once told a colleague, "Audits don't find crimes. They confirm assumptions." It was a statement that would later be quoted in a regulatory report. The missing $1 million account had existed for years. It was not secret. It was not hidden. It was dormant. The funds were originally allocated for a real estate acquisition that never materialized. The money remained untouched, quietly parked, earning minimal interest. It was the kind of account executives forgot about. The kind of account no one watched closely. Except Marcus Vail. Internal records later showed he reviewed that account quarterly. Not for transactions. For availability. On the Saturday night before Elena Brooks was arrested, Marcus Vail entered the building at 1:46 a.m. Security logs confirm it. He did not turn on lights in his office. He went directly to the executive terminal on the 27th floor. At 2:11 a.m., Elena Brooks' keycard registered on the same floor. She was assigned to clean executive offices that night. That detail would become central. At 2:17 a.m., the $1 million transfer occurred. 6 minutes later, Marcus Vail's credentials overrode the system. That override was not flagged. Overrides rarely were. Raventport's financial systems were designed to trust Marcus Vail. He was the founder, the ultimate authority, the exception handler. When Marcus Vail logged in, safeguards relaxed. Alerts downgraded. Secondary approvals auto-cleared. The system assumed legitimacy because it had been taught to. When investigators later reviewed footage of the arrest, they focused on Marcus Vail's smile. It was not satisfaction. It was recognition. The recognition of a plan entering its final phase. By the time Elena Brooks was let out of the building, Marcus Vail had already accomplished what he needed. The $1 million transfer was live. The narrative was set. And attention had shifted downward. Away from the executive floor. Away from him. What Marcus Vail did not anticipate was oversight fatigue. The board of directors had grown tired of explaining scandals, minor ones, carefully managed ones, to investors. The arrest created noise. Noise creates scrutiny. And scrutiny eventually creates paper trails. On the third day after Elena's arrest, the board requested something Marcus Vail had not planned for: a fully external audit. Not internal, not symbolic. External, independent, and not a firm Ravenport had used before. Enter Naomi Carter. Marcus Vail approved the audit request within an hour. Outwardly, it was confidence. Internally, it was calculation. He believed any auditor would follow the same path. Start with the missing million. Confirm Elena's access. Close the loop. What Marcus Vail did not know was who the audit firm would send. He assumed a team, a committee, a bureaucracy. He did not expect one person. At 6:14 a.m. on Wednesday morning, Marcus Vail received an email from Naomi Carter. Subject: Data access confirmation. I will require full transaction histories, server logs, and authorization pathways for the last 5 years. No redactions. No summaries. NC. Marcus Vail read the email twice, then smiled again. Marcus believed the audit would confirm the lie. Naomi Carter was about to ask the wrong questions. By the time dawn broke on Elena Brooks' second day in custody, the story of her guilt had already solidified. Not in court, not in evidence, but in assumption. Assumption travels faster than facts, and once it arrives, it settles in. The interview room was windowless. The walls were beige, chosen deliberately to avoid distraction. A single table sat in the center, bolted to the floor. 2 chairs on one side, one on the other. Elena Brooks sat alone. She had been awake for nearly 30 hours. An officer entered with a file and set it down without ceremony. Miss Brooks, he began, we're going to walk through what happened. He said it the way people say you already know. They showed her screenshots. A terminal login bearing her employee ID. Keycard logs showing her presence on the executive floor. A timestamp matching the transfer. The officer spoke slowly, carefully. People don't accidentally move $1 million, he said. Elena looked at the screen. I don't know how to do that, she replied. The officer nodded, as if expecting that answer. You had access. I had a mop, she said. That line never made it into the official transcript. Financial crime cases rarely start with proof. They start with possibility. Elena's presence made the crime possible. Her job made it plausible. Her position made it convenient. Investigators did not need to prove she stole the money, only that she could have, and that no one else needed to. One detail troubled a junior detective. Elena Brooks' bank records showed no sudden deposits, no unusual withdrawals, no unexplained assets. Her lifestyle had not changed. She still lived in the same apartment, still took the same bus, still bought groceries with coupons. When the detective mentioned this, the response was simple. She hasn't spent it yet. That explanation ended the discussion. By the third day, rumors circulated through the building. Employees whispered. She had access. People like that get desperate. You never really know someone. No one asked why a woman earning minimum wage would risk everything for $1 million she could never hide. No one asked how she would move it. No one asked who had taught her. The story required no answers, only a villain. Elena Brooks had never been disciplined at work. Her performance reviews were consistent, reliable, quiet, detail-oriented. She worked nights because it paid slightly more. She worked holidays because overtime helped cover her son's tuition. Her supervisors described her as unremarkable. In corporate terms, that was high praise. On the 4th interview, a different tactic was used. The officer leaned back and lowered his voice. Help yourself, he said. People cooperate, things go easier. Elena shook her head. There's nothing to say, she replied. That answer frustrated them. People in her position were supposed to break. They were supposed to cry, to bargain, to confess to something, anything. Elena didn't. She simply repeated the truth. A public defender was assigned late on the second day. He was competent, overworked, honest. After reviewing the file, he frowned. This case is thin, he said. But thin cases still ruin lives, Elena replied. He didn't disagree. Systems prefer simplicity. Elena Brooks fit neatly into the narrative. Low status, limited resources, no institutional protection. Marcus Vail did not. Investigating Marcus Vail would require subpoenas, warrants, board approvals, public consequences. Investigating Elena Brooks required a pen. While Elena sat in custody, something else was happening. Not in the police department, not in the boardroom. In a quiet office several floors above where Elena had been arrested, Naomi Carter had begun her audit. And she was not looking at Elena Brooks. Naomi Carter noticed it within hours. The $1 million transfer appeared too perfect. No hesitation, no correction, no secondary attempt, just one clean movement. That wasn't how mistakes looked. That wasn't how amateurs moved money. That was how decoys behaved. That night, Elena lay on a narrow cot staring at the ceiling. She thought about her son, about the building she had cleaned for years, about how quickly a life could be reassigned. In the morning, she would be transferred. Charges would be formalized. The story would become official. Unless something changed. Elena Brooks didn't know it yet, but time was working in her favor. Not because the system cared, but because someone was finally asking the wrong questions. While the case against Elena hardened, Naomi Carter began to suspect the crime wasn't where everyone was looking. Naomi Carter arrived at Raventport Global Holdings at 7:18 a.m., 2 days after Elena Brooks' arrest. She did not announce herself. She signed in, accepted a temporary badge, and waited. From the outside, Naomi Carter did not look like someone who would unsettle a billion-dollar corporation. Her suit was plain. Her hair was pulled back, without ceremony. She carried no briefcase, only a laptop and a slim notebook. What she carried instead was something Raventport had not planned for.
Time.
Naomi Carter had spent 23 years auditing companies that believed they were untouchable. Banks, energy firms, defense contractors. She was not known for uncovering crimes. She was known for outlasting lies. Where others followed instructions, Naomi followed friction. Where others accepted summaries, Naomi demanded source data. She believed one thing above all. Fraud doesn't hide in complexity. It hides in consistency. Marcus Vail met her briefly that morning. The exchange was professional, courteous. "Let us know if you need anything," Marcus said. Naomi nodded. "I will," she replied. She did not ask him questions. She did not need to. Not yet. Naomi's first request surprised the internal finance team. She did not ask for the police report, the arrest affidavit, the internal summary. She asked for raw transaction logs, 5 years, server access timestamps, authorization hierarchies, override permissions history. No annotations, no filtering, just data. The request caused discomfort. Most auditors don't need all that, one executive said. Naomi looked up from her laptop. "I do." They gave it to her. Marcus Vail approved full access without hesitation. In his mind, transparency reinforced innocence. In Naomi's world, transparency revealed patterns. Naomi did not search for theft. She searched for behavior. She charted. When money moved, who approved it? How often exceptions occurred? She built timelines, graphs, behavioral baselines. Raventport's financial activity was remarkably clean. Too clean, which made the missing millions stand out immediately. The transfer was wrong. Not illegal, wrong. It violated Raventport's internal habits. Marcus Vail never moved large sums in single transfers. He fragmented amounts, staggered timing, created distance. The $1 million transfer did none of that. It was blunt, almost careless. Naomi underlined it in red. Naomi cross-referenced transaction timestamps with building access logs. She did not look for names. She looked for overlap. At 2:11 a.m., Elena Brooks' keycard registered on the executive floor. At 2:16 a.m., system permissions escalated. At 2:17 a.m., the transfer occurred. At 2:23 a.m., permissions normalized. Naomi leaned back. Something was missing. She ran the logs again. Slower. That's when she saw it. Another keycard entry. Marcus Vale. 6 minutes after Lena. His access override had temporarily elevated system trust. The log flagged it as routine. Naomi circled it. Overrides were routine, but timing was not. Naomi followed the override trail. It led to a directory in the financial server. The folder was not encrypted. It was not hidden. It simply had no name. No department used unnamed folders. Naomi opened it. Inside were test transactions, authorization simulations, time-stamped drafts, all created weeks before the arrest, all scheduled late at night, all on the executive terminal. Naomi's expression did not change, but her focus sharpened. This was not preparation for theft. This was rehearsal. Someone had practiced, and someone had wanted to know exactly how long they had before alarms triggered. The $1 million transfer was not a mistake. It was a clock. While Naomi studied logs, Marcus Vale sat in meetings. He spoke about resilience, about protecting shareholders, about cooperating fully. He did not mention the unnamed file. He did not mention the override. He assumed no one would look that deeply. Naomi Carter knew something executives often forget. Systems remember what people try to erase. She followed the timestamps forward, and that's when she saw it. Smaller transfers. Distributed. Quiet. Hidden beneath normal activity. They did not look suspicious on their own. Together, they formed a pattern. Naomi added them up. Once. Then again. Then a third time. The total made her pause. $43 million. Moved in 72 hours. While everyone was looking at the Maid, Naomi closed her laptop. She did not rush. She did not alert anyone. She wrote one sentence in her notebook. The arrest was the cover. She now understood the structure. The Maid was never the target. She was the shield. Naomi requested one more thing. Not from finance. From security. She asked for unedited camera footage from the executive floor that night. The request raised eyebrows, but it was approved. Marcus Vale approved it himself. He believed the story was already finished. Naomi had the numbers, but she still needed proof that tied them to a person. The footage arrived at 10:42 p.m. Naomi Carter was alone in the temporary audit office. Lights low, laptop open, legal pad untouched. The building after hours had a different sound. Ventilation hum. Distant elevators. The quiet confidence of people who believed the day's dangers were over. They never were. Except what people assume they don't. Ravenport's executive floor had 16 cameras. 4 covered hallways. 6 watched entrances. 3 monitored elevator lobbies. 2 faced the server room. 1 covered the glass-walled boardroom. Naomi didn't watch them in order. She synchronized timestamps. Security footage is not truth. It is context. 2:07 a.m. The executive elevator opened. Elena Brooks stepped out. She wore her standard uniform, dark slacks, gray shirt, badge clipped neatly to her chest. In one hand, a cleaning cart. In the other, a checklist. She moved like someone used to being invisible. Naomi watched Elena swipe her keycard. Green light. Normal access. 2:11 a.m. Elena entered the server corridor. She did not look at the cameras. She never did. Naomi noted her pace. Unhurried. Routine. Predictable. This was not someone preparing to steal $1 million. 2:14 a.m. Elena stopped at the server room door. She waited. Not long. For seconds. The door opened from the inside. Naomi paused the footage. Zoomed in. Enhanced contrast. A second figure stepped into frame. Marcus Vale. He wasn't wearing a suit. He wore a charcoal sweater, sleeves rolled slightly, no tie. The uniform of an executive who wanted to appear human. The door closed behind them. The timestamp continued. The server room cameras were motion activated. They triggered at 2:16 a.m. They stopped at 2:22 a.m. 6 minutes. Enough time. Not enough detail. But Naomi didn't need detail. She needed correlation. Naomi reopened the unnamed directory. She compared creation times. Then she checked deletion logs. There was no deletion record, which meant the file wasn't deleted. It was moved to a partition that didn't appear on standard audits. A ghost directory, created under Marcus Vail's master credentials. Naomi exhaled slowly. Executives don't steal with their own names. They borrow others. They hide behind access that looks routine. Elena's keycard had been used as noise. Marcus's credentials were the signal. Naomi opened one of the draft transaction files. It contained test amounts. $100,000, $250,000, $500,000. Each labeled with timestamps. Each aborted before completion. Practice runs. She checked one detail most people miss. IP origin. Every test originated from Marcus's office terminal. Not the server room. Not Elena's access point. Naomi returned to the footage. 2:22 a.m. The server room door opened. Marcus exited first. He paused, adjusted his sleeves. Elena followed. She pushed the cart forward. Marcus did not look at her. He did not thank her. He did not acknowledge her at all. The door closed. At 2:25 a.m., Elena swiped into the women's restroom. At 2:27 a.m., Marcus entered the executive elevator alone. At 2:29 a.m., the transfer executed. At 2:31 a.m., Elena's access normalized. At 2:34 a.m., Marcus's override expired. It was perfect. Almost. Marcus assumed no one would sync. Video. Logs. Network paths. Behavioral baselines. He assumed auditors looked for numbers. Naomi looked for intent. Until it did. Naomi exported everything. She created a mirrored archive. Encrypted. Time-stamped. Redundant. Then she drafted her preliminary report. Not an accusation. A question. Why does executive credential activity intersect with an employee arrest timeline? She sent it to the Board Audit Committee, External Legal Counsel, Regulatory Compliance. Not Marcus. At 7:02 a.m., Marcus Vail received an email. Subject line. Clarification requested regarding executive access logs. He read it twice, then a third time. The smile he'd worn for days faded, because Marcus Vail understood something very well. Auditors did not ask questions they couldn't already answer. The file exists. The footage exists. The money exists. Now the system must decide who it protects. The emergency meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. It was labeled a procedural review. Everyone in the room knew that was a lie. The Ravenport boardroom sat on the 42nd floor, glass walls, polished stone table, chairs designed to be comfortable enough to endure long silences. Marcus Vail arrived early. He always did. Early arrival established control. He placed his phone face down, adjusted his chair, smiled as directors filtered in. Naomi Carter entered last. She carried no folders, only her laptop. Seating was not random. Marcus Vail, center left, beside the chairman. Legal counsel, 2 seats down. Audit committee, opposite side. Naomi, end of the table nearest the screen. Power clustered instinctively. Evidence waited patiently. The chairman cleared his throat. We're here to understand an unfortunate situation, he said, and to ensure no reputational damage. Marcus nodded. Naomi said nothing. Marcus spoke smoothly. Elena Brooks violated trust, he said. The systems show unauthorized access. Law enforcement confirmed the transfer. He paused, measured, solemn. We are victims here. Several heads nodded. Naomi watched. Not the faces. The hands. Naomi didn't challenge Marcus. She asked the chairman a question. May I show you something? Permission was granted. She connected her laptop. The screen lit up. Naomi displayed a synchronized sequence. Security footage, access logs, network activity, financial execution, all aligned, second by second. Silence replaced nods. At 2:14 a.m., the video froze. Marcus Vail appeared on screen. In the server corridor, the chairman leaned forward. Legal counsel stiffened. Marcus did not blink.
Calm.
Controlled. This is executive access, she said. Not janitorial. She clicked forward. The unnamed file appeared. Draft transactions. Rehearsals. Test runs. The word simulation glowed faintly on the screen. Marcus finally spoke. These logs don't prove intent, he said. Executives test systems all the time. Naomi nodded. That's true. She clicked again. A spreadsheet appeared. 72 hours. Distributed transfers. Total, $43 million. Moved quietly. Legally authorized. Illegitimately timed. A director whispered. That's not possible. Naomi replied. It is. You just weren't looking for it. Naomi turned to Marcus. Why did you authorize override access 6 minutes after Elena Brooks entered the floor? Marcus opened his mouth.
Closed it.
Then smiled. There must be a system error. Naomi clicked once more. A video clip. 2:22 a.m. Marcus exiting the server room. The override expiration visible. Timestamp aligned. No error.
Just choice.
The chairman spoke quietly. Marcus, why weren't we informed of this activity? Marcus looked around. This room had once protected him. Now it evaluated him. The board did not vote. They didn't need to. Legal counsel leaned in. We recommend immediate suspension of executive authority pending investigation. The word suspension landed like a verdict. While the board deliberated, Naomi stepped outside. She placed one call to the district attorney's office, not to accuse, to provide data. At the same hour, Elena Brooks sat in a holding cell, waiting, believing the world had already decided. Power has cracked, but justice hasn't moved yet. At 9:47 a.m., Elena Brooks stared at the concrete wall of holding cell C. The wall had 3 cracks she'd begun to memorize. The first looked like a river, the second like a bird in flight. The third had no shape, just damage. That one scared her the most. Time in a cell doesn't move forward. It circles. Elena replayed the same questions in her mind. Why didn't they listen? Why didn't anyone check? Why did he smile? She didn't know his name, only his face. At the same moment, Marcus Vale sat alone in his private office. The board had asked him not to leave the building. Not yet suspended. Not yet arrested. Just contained. His phone buzzed with messages he didn't answer. He stared at the skyline, and for the first time in years, it did not belong to him. Marcus had built his career on narrative. He decided who people believed, who was visible, who was expendable. Elena Brooks had been perfect. Invisible.
Poor. Alone.
A story that required no defense. At 10:12 a.m., Marcus's attorney called. They're involving the DA, she said. Marcus said nothing. They have synchronized logs, she continued. Video. Network trails. Still silence. And the auditor, she added. She's very thorough. Elena's public defender arrived shortly after noon. He was young. Overworked. He spoke gently. There's new information, he said. Elena looked up. She had learned not to expect hope. They're reviewing the evidence, he said. There may have been misinterpretations. Elena swallowed. Does that mean I can go home? He hesitated. Not yet. Elena leaned back against the wall. She nodded. Not because she understood, but because nodding was easier than breaking. At 1:34 p.m., the district attorney's office requested full access to Ravenport servers, executive communications, internal audit findings. The request bypassed Marcus entirely. His authority evaporated without ceremony. Security escorted Marcus from the executive floor. Not in handcuffs.
Yet.
Just a quiet walk. Past employees who did not meet his eyes. Past doors that no longer opened for him. Marcus drafted a statement. Then deleted it. Drafted another. Deleted that too. There was no version where he was the victim anymore. Naomi Carter visited the holding facility that evening. Not as an auditor. As a witness. She sat across from Elena, separated by glass. You didn't steal anything, Naomi said. Elena's eyes filled. They said they had proof. They had a story, Naomi replied. Not proof. Elena asked one question. Will they say they were wrong? Naomi didn't answer immediately. They'll say what the evidence forces them to say. The truth is moving, but slowly. And the system does not like being embarrassed. By the time the sun rose the next morning, Raventport Global Holdings was no longer in control of its own story. The system was. And the system had teeth. At 6:11 a.m., federal agents arrived. Not loudly, not dramatically. They wore windbreakers, not uniforms. Compliance first, force last. They presented a warrant at the lobby desk and waited patiently while security called upstairs. The lobby camera caught it all. For the first time, Raventport's glass walls reflected fear instead of prestige. At 6:19 a.m., an internal email leaked. Federal authorities are conducting a routine review. By 6:27 a.m., employees were whispering. By 6:34 a.m., finance teams stopped working entirely. By 6:40 a.m., the press began calling. Prosecutors did not begin with the $1 million transfer. They started smaller, distributed, quiet, just like the theft. They followed. Shell vendors, offshore consultants, temporary holding accounts, each one legitimate on paper, each one connected by the same approval path. Marcus Vales. Marcus's attorneys attempted control. They framed him as overworked, delegative, betrayed by subordinates. But fraud does not care about intention, only authorization. And every path led back to him. Naomi Carter submitted her expanded findings at 11:58 a.m. It was 143 pages. No adjectives, no emotion, just sequences, timelines, choices. The report ended with one sentence. This activity required executive intent. At 12:41 p.m., the district attorney approved a superseding charge. Financial conspiracy, wire fraud, obstruction. The charges carried weight, not because of prison time, but because they named a person. Elena Brooks was eating lunch when the guard stopped outside her cell. You're being released, he said. She froze. I didn't do anything, she whispered, instinctively defensive. The guard paused. I know. Elena signed paperwork with shaking hands. She was given back her shoes, her watch, her phone. 46 missed calls. She stepped outside into daylight that felt unfamiliar. Naomi was waiting. I'm sorry, Naomi said. Not for herself. For the delay. For the silence. For the system. Elena nodded. That was all she could manage. Marcus Vale was arrested at 3:22 p.m. Not publicly. Not yet. But the cuffs clicked all the same. The man who once smiled as a maid was arrested did not smile now. The first articles focused on Marcus, his wealth, his betrayal, his fall. Only one outlet mentioned Elena Brooks. In paragraph 12, Elena returned home to an apartment that no longer felt safe. Her neighbors looked at her differently. Some apologetic, some embarrassed, some unconvinced. Exoneration travels slower than accusation. Eventually, charges against Elena were formally dropped. Quietly. No press conference. No apology. Just a line item in a docket. The crime is exposed, but justice is not finished. Justice, when it finally arrives, never asks who suffered the most. It asks who can afford the consequences. Raventport Global Holdings released a statement at 8:03 a.m. It was 3 paragraphs long, carefully worded, legally sterile. We regret any inconvenience caused by recent events and remain committed to transparency. No names, no apology, no mention of Elena Brooks. The silence was intentional. Within 48 hours, Raventport's stock dipped 11%. 2 board members resigned. 3 compliance officers were quietly dismissed. No executive bonuses were clawed back. The company would survive. It always did. Elena Brooks filed a civil suit. Wrongful arrest, defamation, negligence. Her attorneys warned her. They'll delay, they said. They'll bury you in procedure. She nodded. She had already learned patience the hard way. The case never went to trial. Ravenport settled quietly. The number was sealed, but it was enough to clear Elena's debts, fund her future, change nothing else. Money repairs finances. It does not repair time. Marcus pleaded not guilty. Of course he did. His defense leaned on complexity, blame diffusion, technicalities. But complexity doesn't impress juries. Stories do. And his story no longer held. After 12 hours of deliberation,
Guilty.
on all counts, the courtroom did not cheer. It exhaled. Marcus Vale was sentenced to 14 years.
White-collar time.
Minimum security. He would be fine. That was the quiet truth no one said aloud. Elena Brooks did not attend the sentencing. She was at work. A new job. Different building. Different uniform. Same invisibility. But now she owned it. Naomi Carter declined interviews. She returned to her work. Another company. Another set of numbers. Another lie waiting patiently. She wrote one new line in her notebook. Never assume the system protects the innocent. Years later, Ravenport's scandal became a case study. Business schools debated controls. Ethics seminars discussed oversight. Elena Brooks' name was a footnote. The billionaire smiled. The maid was arrested. The auditor opened one file. And the world shifted, just enough to reveal what it always hides. Justice came. But not cleanly. And never for free. Elena Brooks still wakes up before dawn.
Not because she has to.
Because her body remembers a time when waking late meant punishment. She brews coffee slowly now. Lets the steam rise. Lets the silence exist without fear. The world did not apologize to her, but it no longer owns her either. That matters. The settlement paid for a better apartment. A safer neighborhood. A future that didn't require survival mode. But it could not erase the nights in the cell. The sound of the door locking. The certainty that no one was coming. That memory stays. Not as pain, as clarity. Marcus Vale writes letters from prison. To former colleagues. To journalists. To people who no longer respond. In every letter, he insists he was misunderstood. He never writes Elena's name. Some silences are confessions. Naomi Carter framed nothing. No headlines. No awards. No commendations. She kept the notebook. The one sentence she added after Ravenport. Truth survives. Systems resist it. Then she moved on. She always does. Years later, Elena passes a glass office building downtown. For a moment, she sees her reflection. Not a maid.
Not a suspect.
Not a headline. Just a woman who survived being erased. She smiles. Not because justice was perfect, but because she was never the crime. Some stories end with power. Others end with peace. This one ends with truth, finally spoken aloud.